everyone, and welcome to another deep dive. This time, we're heading over to Italy.
Ooh, Italy.
Not for the pasta or the beautiful scenery, though.
So,
no, we're diving into something a little more unexpected. We're looking at Italian lotto prediction.
oh wow.
Yeah, so we've got all this really interesting material, a YouTube video transcript, actually, from a guy named Gianni D'Amore. He's using software, to try and predict lotto numbers.
Okay.
And then we've got excerpts from this book, Lotto, Nuovi Strategie Vincenti, and it's by Matteo Palumbo. He's got a more visual approach, it seems like, focusing on geometry and patterns and stuff.
So they're both trying to predict something that's supposed to be totally random.
Right.
Yeah.
That's the big question here, right? I mean, is there really some kind of secret order in all this chaos, or are they both kind of chasing after, some phantom pattern?
It really makes you think, I mean, the idea that you could predict the lottery, it almost seems impossible, right? But the Italian lotto enthusiasts, they're totally convinced that there's a system to it.
All right, well, let's start with Gianni D'Amore then. So in his YouTube video, he's breaking down, his predictions for this Milan-Naples draw.
Yeah.
And he's using this software that he calls Lotto Scientifico.
Mm-hmm.
And get this, he even predicts really specific outcomes, like things like ambata secca 2 and ambo secco 290.
Whoa.
Yeah. So can you break those terms down for us? What do they even mean?
Yeah. So ambata secca means he's trying to predict just a single number that's going to be drawn.
Oh, okay.
So he's saying in this Milan-Naples draw, the number 2 is definitely going to come up.
Wow.
And then ambo secco is where he's predicting two numbers that'll be drawn together.
Okay.
So he thinks 2 and 90 are going to show up as a pair. Yeah. But the really interesting thing is how much he focuses on that number 90.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he even mentions it in this technique he uses called cyclical harmony and these trapezio patterns that he's found.
Okay, cyclical harmony and trapezio patterns.
Yeah.
That sounds pretty cryptic. Can you walk us through that a little bit? What's the logic behind those?
Absolutely. So cyclical harmony, as far as I can tell, it's all about the idea that certain numbers kind of have a rhythmic relationship with each other over time. So D'Amore thinks if you analyze past draws and you look for these cyclical patterns, you can actually predict which numbers are more likely to get drawn together in the future. And then trapezio patterns, those refer to specific geometric arrangements of the numbers within the history of the lotto, so it's kind of like connecting the dots. But instead of just making a simple line, you're looking for more complex shapes like trapezoids that pop up from how those numbers have been drawn in the past.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so he's looking for these recurring patterns, like how numbers appear over time, and also in the geometric relationships between them.
Exactly.
That's pretty complex.
It is.
But is this all just based on intuition? Or is there some real mathematical backing to his methods?
Well, D'Amore definitely believes there's a strong mathematical foundation to his approach. I mean, he even talks about the number 90 in relation to something he calls a quadrato magico.
Quadrato magico.
Yeah, which means it means magic square in English. And those are those special arrangements of numbers where the sum of each row and column and diagonal, they all add up to the same value.
Oh, yeah. Magic squares. I remember those from school.
Yeah, exactly.
So he's using that. He's taking a mathematical concept like that and he's applying it to lotto number.
He is. It's pretty clever.
That's wild.
Yeah, and what I really like is that he's not keeping all this to himself. He's really active in the Italian lotto community, sharing his knowledge, updating his methods all the time. He even promotes his book, Lotto Scientifico, in the video.
So it's for him, it's not just about winning the lottery. It's about this intellectual pursuit, trying to uncover these hidden patterns.
I think that's exactly right. He seems really passionate about sharing his discoveries and contributing to the knowledge of this whole unique community.
Yeah, it's a big collaborative effort to crack the lotto's code.
Oh.
All right, so we've got D'Amore and his software and his cyclical harmony and his trapezio patterns. Now let's shift gears a bit and talk about Matteo Palumbo and his book Lotto, Nuovi Strategie Vincenti. Now he seems to have a much more visual approach, right?
Yeah, you got it. Palumbo goes deep into this method called Ciclometria.
Ciclometria.
Which translates to, cyclometry. And it's all about using geometric patterns and the relationships between numbers to try and find those winning combinations.
That's a totally different approach.
It is.
So how does Ciclometria actually work?
Well, he breaks it down into these 3 levels of analysis. The first level is all about identifying what he calls vincoli, which are basically constraints or limitations between the numbers that get drawn.
Okay.
So think of it like you're looking for family resemblance. But instead of physical features, you're looking for patterns in how those numbers have been drawn together in the past.
Okay, so he's not just looking at the numbers themselves, but also the positions they have in the draw.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that adds a whole other level of complexity to it.
So what kind of constraints are we talking about here? Like, can you give me an example?
Sure. So let's say, maybe two specific numbers. They never get drawn together in like consecutive positions. Or it could be that certain numbers tend to like switch between odd and even positions, in the next draw. So those are the kinds of things he's looking at is Vincoli.
So he's building this like rule book based on how the numbers have acted in the past.
Right.
And then uses that to predict how they might act in the future.
That's it. By finding these recurring patterns and limits, he thinks you can narrow down the possibilities and make more informed predictions.
So that's level 1. What about level 2? Does it get even more complicated?
Oh, yeah. Level 2 of this cyclometry really gets visual.
Okay.
He starts looking at the numbers as they're laid out on the actual lotto ticket. He analyzes how they are arranged based on if they're even or odd, high or low, things like that. And by visualizing these patterns, he thinks you can start to see trends and relationships that you wouldn't notice just from looking at the numbers themselves.
So he's literally looking for visual patterns in the numbers on the ticket.
Exactly.
Like some kind of secret lotto code that's just hidden in plain sight.
Yeah, he believes there's like a visual language to the lotto.
Wow.
And by learning to read that language, you can get some valuable insights into how it works, like deciphering a secret code.
All right. I'm starting to see how this could be pretty intriguing, even artistic.
Definitely.
Now, what about that third level? Where does he take it from there?
Level 3 is where things get really interesting. He starts looking for symmetrical patterns.
Okay.
Yeah, he thinks that symmetry is key in the lotto. Like the system is trying to find some kind of balance. So by finding these symmetrical patterns and understanding how they've played out in the past, he thinks you can get a sense of how they might repeat in future draws.
Wow. So he's saying there's this hidden order, like a sense of balance within this random system.
Right.
That's a pretty bold claim.
It is.
But the idea of finding symmetry in the lottery, that's pretty mind-blowing.
And it gets even more complex because he's not just talking about simple symmetries, that stay the same. No, he introduces these concepts of dynamic simple and dynamic complex, which suggests these patterns are always evolving and shifting, reacting to the previous draws. He's not looking at the lotto as this static thing, but as something that's constantly moving.
Hold on. Dynamic simple and dynamic complex. You're going to have to break this down for me.
Okay, so dynamic simple refers to patterns that come from the movement of just one number over time.
Okay.
So like you might notice a certain number likes to jump back and forth between certain positions, and that creates a predictable oscillation. Whereas dynamic complex, that involves multiple numbers, all interacting with each other, creating these really intricate patterns of movement and symmetry that evolve over multiple draws.
So he's not just looking at the numbers or the static patterns, but like how those numbers are moving together? Yeah.
In relation to each other over time?
Exactly.
That's some next level analysis.
It really is.
It's really making me rethink what random even means. I want to hear more about how he uses these dynamic concepts to make his predictions.
Yeah, and it gets even more complex because then he brings in this other technique called Demetria.
Demetria. All right, you're going to have to explain that one.
Okay, so Demetria focuses on the distances between the numbers that are drawn.
Okay.
So instead of just looking at the numbers themselves, he starts to look at the gaps between them, the spaces they occupy within the sequence of the draw.
Whoa. The spaces between the numbers. So he's finding meaning in like the void. That's crazy. But how does that even work? What kind of insights can you get from that?
Well, for instance, he might see that a certain number tends to be drawn like a specific number of positions away from another number.
Or he might find that the distances between certain numbers follow a specific pattern or cycle. It's like he's treating the spaces between numbers as if they were numbers themselves, looking for patterns and meaning in those gaps.
Honestly, that is mind-blowing. Who knew there was so much to uncover in a lottery draw? We've gone from software and math to geometric patterns and dynamic movement, and now we're measuring the spaces between the numbers.
I know.
It's like peeling back layers of an onion, and each layer just keeps getting more complex.
It really makes you wonder what randomness even is.
I know, right?
And if there could be some hidden order to things that we think are just pure chance.
Exactly. So for everyone listening out there, we've really only scratched the surface of all these methods.
Yeah, just a little bit.
But stick with us, because in the next part, we're going to dive even deeper.
We are?
Into this world of Italian lotto prediction. We're going to explore the logic behind these approaches. And we're going to try to answer that €1,000,000 question. Can any of this stuff actually help you predict the lottery?
We'll see about that.
We'll see.
But I think even if it doesn't lead to a winning ticket, I think we're already getting some really valuable insights into how people think about these big complex systems and their desire to find patterns in the world around us.
Absolutely. So stay tuned.
We'll be right back. It really is remarkable, isn't it? I mean, the idea that even in something like the lottery, something so random, there could be these hidden patterns just waiting to be found.
It's definitely got me rethinking everything I thought I knew about randomness.
Yeah.
But let's be real here for a sec. Can any of these methods actually, guarantee a win?
That's the big question, right?
Yeah.
And honestly, no system can guarantee a lottery win.
Right?
I mean, the lottery is designed to be random.
Yeah.
And that's a big part of why people love it.
Yeah, that's true.
But definitely want to stress responsible gaming here, you know.
Exactly. This deep dive is about exploring these cool ideas and approaches.
Yeah.
It's not about encouraging anyone to, gamble recklessly or anything.
Absolutely. But what we can take away from all of this is this sense of awe at how dedicated and creative these Italian lotto enthusiasts are. They're not just playing the lottery. They're engaging in this big intellectual puzzle.
Right.
Almost like a quest to figure out the nature of chance itself.
Yeah, it's like they're saying, hey, universe, I see you rolling those numbered balls, and I'm going to figure out how you do it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And even if they never completely crack the code, the whole process of searching and analyzing and theorizing, that's got to be intellectually stimulating.
Yeah.
I mean, it really pushes you to think outside the box.
Totally. It's like they're explorers charting this unknown territory. They might not always find what they're searching for, but the journey itself is rewarding.
Yeah. And think about all the knowledge they gain along the way.
Yeah.
The math, the geometry, even just understanding how these dynamic systems work. That knowledge could be valuable even outside of the lottery.
Oh, really? Like how so? What other fields could use this type of thinking?
Well, think about the stock market. It's full of random events. But what if there are these tiny patterns or cycles that we just haven't spotted yet?
That's interesting.
Or how about the weather? Seems pretty chaotic, right? But maybe there are these underlying orders and symmetries that could help us predict the weather better.
Wow, those are some pretty big ideas.
Right. And it could be these lotto enthusiasts with their quest to predict the unpredictable are actually helping us make discoveries in other areas.
That's amazing. So you're saying these folks might be paving the way for breakthroughs in other fields?
It's definitely possible. They're basically proving that even in systems that seem random, there might be these hidden structures and relationships just waiting for us to find them.
Yeah.
And that kind of thinking can be used to tackle all sorts of problems.
Okay, so for everyone listening, we've looked at two very different ways to approach Italian lotto prediction. One that relies on software and math, and the other that's all about visual patterns and geometry.
Right.
For you, what's the biggest difference between the two approaches?
I think the most interesting difference is how they each understand randomness. You know, Moore seems to believe that randomness is predictable. Like there's this hidden code that can be broken.
Yeah.
But Palumbo, he seems to embrace the mystery of it all.
Right.
While still acknowledging that there could be some underlying order.
That's a really good point. It's like they represent these two completely different philosophies within the world of lotto prediction.
Right. One's trying to conquer randomness with logic and calculations.
Yeah.
And the other's trying to understand it and maybe even work with it through intuition and visual perception.
It's fascinating, and it makes you think about things like knowledge and belief and the limits of what we can understand.
Absolutely.
What's really remarkable is that both approaches, even with all their differences, they both come from this deep passion for the Italian lotto and this belief that there's something more to this game than we see on the surface.
It really is. They've almost unlocked a secret language, a way of seeing the world that most people miss. And that's pretty inspiring.
I agree. It shows us that there's always something new to learn, to explore, to discover, even in places we might not expect.
Definitely.
Now, I'm curious, what stands out most to you from everything we've talked about so far? What really got you thinking?
You know what I find the most interesting? It's that idea of Demetria.
Yeah.
It just blows my mind.
What?
Finding meaning in the spaces between numbers. in the empty spot. It's like he's saying the absence of something can tell us just as much as its presence.
I know. It's like he's found a way to map the negative space in the lottery, and somehow that's revealing even more patterns. But honestly, all these methods are kind of wild.
They are.
It makes you wonder if there are hidden patterns in the lottery. Could there be hidden patterns in other parts of life that we just haven't noticed yet?
That's a great question. And it brings us back to the bigger picture of this deep dive. These Italian lotto enthusiasts are really challenging us to rethink our ideas about randomness and to consider that maybe there's more order in the universe than we realize.
Right. It's like they're saying, don't just take things as they appear on the surface. Look closer, question what you think you know, and you might be surprised by what you find.
Exactly. And who knows, maybe those insights could be applied to all sorts of things, all sorts of challenges where random events seem to be in control.
So for everyone listening, we've explored this intriguing world of Italian lotto prediction, from software algorithms to geometric patterns.
We have.
We've even explored the idea of finding meaning in the spaces between numbers. But we're not finished yet. In the last part of our deep dive, we're going to come back to that big question. Can any of this actually help you predict the lottery?
We'll see.
We will. And maybe even more importantly, what can we learn from these passionate people and their quest to find order in a world that often seems random?
Stay with us. We'll be right back to finish up our exploration of the Italian lotto and the amazing minds trying to decode its secrets.
All right, so we're back
We are.
and ready to wrap up our deep dive into the world of Italian lotto prediction. We've gone over so much, from Gianni D'Amore's software and analysis to Matteo Palumbo and his visual cyclometry. We even talked about finding meaning in the spaces between numbers with Demetria.
That's been a wild ride.
It really has.
Yeah.
So we've seen how these Italian lotto enthusiasts are using all this stuff. Math, geometry, even philosophy, it seems like.
Right.
Trying to decode something that's supposed to be totally random.
Yeah. It makes you think.
But the question everyone's got to be asking is, can any of this really help you win?
Well, that's the big question, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, these methods are super interesting, and they definitely get you thinking. But we have to admit that the lottery is, by design, a game of chance.
Right.
There's no guarantees no matter how complex your system is.
So even with all this analysis, all these patterns, all this symmetry, there's no foolproof way to get those winning numbers.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
I mean, if there was a guaranteed way to win, everybody would be doing it.
True.
That randomness is what makes it exciting.
Yeah, that's a good point. But then what's the point of it all? If you can't guarantee a win, why spend all this time and energy on these methods?
I think that's a really great question.
Yeah.
And it gets to the core of what we've been talking about.
Yeah.
I don't think it's just about the money for these people.
No.
It's about the intellectual pursuit. The challenge of finding order in something that seems like chaos.
Right.
That satisfaction of finding a hidden pattern.
Yeah.
Even if that pattern doesn't lead to a big win.
It's like they're playing a game within a game.
Exactly.
They're not just trying to beat the lottery. They're trying to outsmart it, to understand it.
Yeah.
Even if that doesn't make them rich.
It's all about human curiosity. Our need to understand the world, even when faced with things that seem random.
So if someone's listening to us right now thinking, okay, this is cool and all, but what does it mean for me? What would you say?
Well, I think there are a few important things to remember.
Okay.
First, there's usually more to things than we see on the surface.
Yeah.
We just accept randomness as a fact of life. But maybe there are patterns and connections we just aren't noticing.
That's a good point.
And second, we should always be challenging our assumptions. Just because something seems random doesn't mean it is.
Right.
And finally, it shows how powerful curiosity and persistence can be. These enthusiasts are driven by passion, a passion to understand the world. And that passion can lead to amazing discoveries, even if those discoveries aren't winning lottery numbers.
So maybe the real lesson isn't about predicting the lottery. It's about exploring the unknown, looking for patterns, and holding on to that sense of wonder and curiosity.
I like that. Yeah, it's about realizing that even in a world that often feels unpredictable, there might be an underlying order just waiting for us to find it.
And who knows, maybe that discovery is closer than we think, just hidden in plain sight like those winning lotto numbers.
Maybe.
Well, that's a great place to wrap things up.
It is.
A little mystery, a little inspiration, and a reminder to keep looking for those hidden patterns all around us. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Italian lotto prediction. We'll see you next time when we explore something else unexpected.